Hello, everybody. Welcome to this special audio only edition of the Banyen Books podcast. Today, we are in conversation with Martine Prechtel. My name is Ross McKeechee. And before we get into Martine's formal introduction, I would just like to acknowledge that although we have people joining from around the world in the Banyen Books community, the physical location of Banyen Books and Sound in Kitsilano in Vancouver is on the traditional unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Now, Banyen Books is celebrating its 50th birthday this year. That's 50 years as Canada's spiritual and healing resource, a local independent bookstore, and just letting everybody know that by purchasing from Banyen Books, you're supporting all kinds of wonderful free programming, just like this event today. Now, you can go to our website to make any purchases, banyen.com, banyen.com, or you can order by phone, or you can go in person if you're in Vancouver. In Kitsilano at 4th and Dunbar, open 7 days a week. Now, our honored guest today, Martine Prechtel. As an avid student of Indigenous eloquence, innovative language, and thought, Martine Prechtel is a writer, artist, and teacher who, through his work, both written and spoken, hopes to promote the subtlety, irony, and pre-modern vitality hidden in any living language. A half-blood Native American with a Pueblo Indian upbringing, he left New Mexico to live in the village of Santiago Atitlan, Guatemala, eventually becoming a full member of the Tsutujil Mayan community there. For many years, he served as a principal in that body of village leaders, responsible for piloting the young people through the meanings of their ancient stories in the rituals of adult rites of passage. Once again, now residing in his beloved New Mexico, Prechtel teaches at his international school, Bolad's Kitchen. Through an immersion into the world's lost seeds and sacred farming, forgotten music, magical architecture, ancient textile making, metal smithing, the making and using of tools, musical instruments, and food, and the deeper meanings of the origins of all these things in the older stories, in ancient texts, and by teaching through the traditional use of riddles, Prechtel hopes to inspire people of every mind and way to regrow and revitalize real culture and to find their own sense of place in the sacredness of a newly found daily existence in love with the natural world. Martine Prechtel's previous works, his previous books, they include, and these are all available at Banyen, Secrets of the Talking Jaguar, Long Life, Honey in the Heart, The Disobedience of the Daughter of the Sun, Stealing Bonifacio's Roses, The Unlikely Peace at Kuchumakik, and The Smell of Rain on Dust, Grief and Praise. Today he's here with us speaking about his latest book, which is called Rescuing the Light, Quotes from the Oral Teachings of Martine Prechtel. And I want to let everybody know that Martine has agreed graciously to do a second interview with us about his other newly released book, which is called The Mare and the Mouse, Stories of My Horses, which is volume 1 in a 3-part series. Now, that interview we'll be recording privately, Martine and I, and we'll be posting that. So anybody who's interested, keep your eyes out. You can look on any of the podcasting sites, search Banyen Books in Conversation. So Spotify, Google Music, YouTube Music now, Apple Music, or you can Google it online, look up Banyen Books in Conversation podcast, and you can subscribe, and that will be posted after we record it on August 1st. So his latest book, Rescuing the Light, I'll just read what Coleman Barks, author of The Essential Rumi and Rumi Soul Fury, has to say about his latest book, Rescuing the Light. He says, "This is a very powerful soul growth book, one of the most powerful in recent years. The ideas here for renewal and reorganizing are so fresh and new that they quicken the taste buds and put an expectant readiness in the legs. Martine Prechtel, thank you so much for joining us and welcome.
Thank you. It's good to hear your voice talking away there so beautifully. I hope I live up to what you said there.
Oh, well, I'm sure that you will. Thank you for joining us. Now, this is a beautiful book taken from your quotes from your oral teachings. And at the end of the book, you tell the story of the students and their note taking and how this book came to be. I'm wondering if you can fill us in a little bit on that story.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was my way of trying to thank them. Well, what happened with this book is Rescuing the Light is that during all of the very hard times for people throughout the world, the COVID-19 and all of the death and shutdowns and cultural back and forth and previous regimes of politics being very hard on certain groups of people. And I was thinking, I said, I've got these other books that I've been writing, and I'm going to put them out this following year, and I want to put out this horse book too. But I wanted to make a book where there was something smaller, because a lot of the things that I write are very large thoughts, very large sentences, as you've already noticed, and I wanted something for the people, so like a little raft, of thoughts. Because I have a school called Bullet Kitchen. In Bullet Kitchen, we go very, very extreme detail about all sorts of historical things and why people ended up being the way they are and what can do about being a little bit differently culturally. And so as I speak, when I teach, I don't teach really with any sort of syllabus or anything like that. I'm not like a scripted person. I teach what I know, and it's in my bones. And so I just speak. And when the students that signed up for my school when it first started up, which I never thought would take off, but it did, and they came, and what they were really expecting was an oral tradition that they would sit like under a shade tree and hear some wise guy, wise man speak wise things, and that was fine with me, except the problem is nobody could remember anything because they're from what I'm calling now the post-literate age, and also from cultural inundation of writing for so many centuries that to remember anything, that it was very difficult. It would just not stick. So after a few sessions, I started saying, I'm going to have to let these guys take notes if they want to take notes. So some of the people did do that, and then some didn't. But some of them really took notes. I mean, they're serious, like court stenographers. I mean, unbelievable. So they wrote down all sorts of things. And anyway, in the process of all that, I thought, you know what? These people, these students that are certainly not children of all ages, maybe the thing that is most dear to their heart, if they will send it to me, what I said, then I will know what to put in this book. Because I first started to write the book what I wanted everybody else to hear. You see what I said, saying that. But I started teaching these enormous teachings, I said, no, this is not what the people need. And so I had the students write in, and so they wrote in their notes. Some of them sent in, they kind of strained their notes to find the small sayings that they kind of lived by on a daily basis, or stuff that got them through hard times, or things that they wanted to remember of the things we've been teaching, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they said a lot of things. Now, I have to admit, some people weren't listening too tight, and a lot of the things I said were actually said by my grandfather. Some of them were said by Eleanor Roosevelt. Some were said by Benjamin Franklin, I think, and very Rumi, and they weren't all me. I said, oh, I can't put that in there, And then some of them were said by them, and they forgot that I didn't say it, and I repeated it again. But I always provenience everything, But so those ones weren't going in there. But then there were, about 5,000 different sayings, and when I would get enough that where I would have like about 100 or 50 of basically the same thing. I would say, okay, here's one that's very special for everybody. And so I started, kind of compiling and straining through that. And then some of them, they were really actually very, very inaccurate about what I was saying, but they had remembered a certain amount of it. So I had to redo them so that they actually worked. And so, but it was the idea of taking notes. They were so funny because, in this hall where we have our school, It's very antique. It's an ancient. It looks like something out of the Margiana Oasis culture from Turkmenistan. It's this giant adobe building with these beautiful, huge beams from the tops of the mountain that died in a forest fire. Standing, and it's got these Moroccan riyad, lamps that were given to me by a friend of mine whose father was, a Sufi guy, and then we have all these carpets sent to us by Kurds and different tribal peoples. And it's quite elegant inside, but it's very old-fashioned. I mean, there's no water, there's barely electricity and so on. So people sit all over. And so when they started taking notes, these people are very gung-ho that everything's going to be made by hand. So they have these handmade notebooks, and handmade pencils. Very beautiful. And so when they would take notes, if I said anything smart, then all of a sudden, everybody's head would go down there scratching away, between their knees on their clipboards or whatever they had. Their little books. And then when they got done scratching, their head would pop up again. And if I said anything that looked significant, boom, down they go again. So I said, what does this remind me of? I said, this reminds me of a big old pond full of ducks. You know how they are, like pintails and all the dabbling ducks, when they're in the pond, when and their tails go up in the air and they're under the water for a while. So it looks just like that. So I call them my little ducks. And so, that's my endearment term for the people who were there who did that. So anyway, that's kind of how they came about. But
that's beautiful. And this is a beautiful book, not just the content, but the imagery, your artwork throughout. And there's a really neat
thank you so much.
Of the ducks in the pond.
Yes, little drawings on it.
Yeah. Now, this capacity to retain, to remember oral teachings, how can we begin to rebuild this natural human capacity?
Well, you have to come to my school.
Okay.
Come. That's all we do, man. That's all we do, man. There's 15 years of working on that, basically, So I think one of the major things, if you really want to retain things, is music. Music, not necessarily pop music, but not necessarily exempting pop music either. But where you store memory, like when people start to write, I've got a saying about that in here. Nobody writes anything down to remember it. They write it down so they don't have to remember it. They don't store it in the computer so they remember it. They store it there because they can go back there and dial it up again. And so in an indigenous society that doesn't have any of these machines or any pencils or paper or anything like that, from an early age, memory is like so well developed because the part that stores music in the mind, because musicians have tremendous memory to remember what word comes after next and which comes after next and which comes after next, which note after which after note and note after. And so the language capacity of the capacity of a people to remember something really is encoded in the language itself. And most all language is based initially, really, really, really long time ago, on music, and is extremely musical. And so in order to be able to get the capacity to have an oral tradition, you have to actually be able to speak in a way that's worth remembering. I know it sounds kind of weird, but you have to actually, no one has to do anything. I'm just trying to speak English here. Okay, you can do what you want. But if you really want to learn, you have to learn to speak an eloquence, which at this time and age is not hip at all. The idea now is reduction, because everyone's trying to get where they're going to go before the world ends. And that's what's going to cause it to end. The thing is to go slow, learn things gradually, speak a gorgeous language that is big. And people say, you're beating around the bush, just get to the point. No, there is no point. The point is the bush. You need to have a context of gorgeousness and beauty with your language that is worth remembering. And if that doesn't come down, then no one's got anything to hear. So if people are just trying to remember what they need in order to get their money out of the ATM machine, to get their funds put over here, to do this, to do that. They're not trying to make the world come alive. And memory, like with birds, with bears, with plants, with everything, is basically the spiritual DNA of the universe. So in a culture like it's happening now, a memory is becoming extremely rare. Because you've got everything else doing your memory for you. So it's a muscle that's not being used. But if there's nothing worth remembering, the soul says, I don't care about any of this junk that you think is so dang important on your computer, and so it doesn't remember it, and it hates you. So to make friends with that, of course, you have to have the intercourse between humans, between plants, between animals, everything between everything. And I found, at least in my school, that every morning when we get there, I have them listen to music from somewhere around the world that's recorded. Granted, it's not them playing, but then I have them making musical instruments and learning how to play them from other countries, other places, and then singing in other languages, which actually changes the muscles on your face, but also makes you start listening to sounds that you don't normally hear. But people usually what they do when they listen to something is they bend it to make it look or sound or act, or they memorize something the way they think it should have been, instead of actually hearing what was said, instead of actually hearing or seeing what's there. And so a lot of people just go through life, just kind of zooming along really fast, not seeing anything, and there's nothing to remember. So to have the memory banks functioning, you have to have one side working with the other side. So there has to be a left-right thing, front-back thing, top-bottom thing. And so if you learn to sing in the languages of people, especially the enemies of your ancestors, and learn to tell jokes in other languages, and learn to speak those languages so that you do not have to translate them from your birth language, which is very difficult, then you'll be beginning to have a tremendous memory. I've noticed people have a hard time these days learning languages that are not their own languages without writing them down first. Because I speak a number of native languages, and none of them I learned by writing. This is not to brag. It's just they're not written.
Right.
There's not really any known way of writing them. People are just going to make it up. And as a young person, you look at little children when they're coming out of the womb. They don't go around rehearsing meanings. They go around rehearsing sounds. Look at a 2-year-old going, or even a 1-year-old going, they're rehearsing the musicality of what comes out of their throat. And so the musicality is where the actual memory starts to be encoded inside our souls. And you don't only remember in your head, you can remember in different parts of your bodies. So, to remember is a tremendous thing that's being taken away from us by modernity's comfort of cyber technique, So you have to really actually work really hard. And working alone, you can't really do it. It has to do with other people. So that's kind of why I developed this funny old school of mine. So that people will sing, in another language, and then there are all these little subtleties in the songs. They'll right away try to, anglify them and take this part out and take that part out and this side. No. You said that's got to be in there, baby. Just leave that in there. This song's from Mali, or this song is from Tene, Navajo people. All that little breath in there goes like that. That's not just there for no reason. That's got a meaning. And then you start to hear that subtlety, you see. So when you start to listen to the music, even recorded music, you start to say, whoa, there's a whole history of the people in here. And then you start to hear and see things that have detail that is worth remembering. Before, you just already whitewash it, already sand it off to being this little straight thing. You just shove it in the shelf. Blam, the shutters are closed, and you forget all about it. And it's hard to have the recall. So, like I said, it's an enormous subject, but it can't be addressed by talking about it. It has to be addressed by doing. So, there you go. I got a lot of sayings in here about that, actually, as you probably know, man.
Yeah. Now you started out just with oral teachings, and then you got into writing. And my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, was that Robert Bly had something to do with that.
Well, Robert Bly, Robert Bly, good old right, he's still alive, and God bless him. And well, the thing is that teaching, I never thought to teach in the United States. I was living in Guatemala for a long time, and I came away from there not because I wanted to leave, but it's because of all the violence and the troubles, and because I was marked. And when I got to the United States, I wasn't here. I wrote a lot of books about this, so people can check that out and see what happened. But at some point, making a living in this country, nobody really believes anybody is really actually who they are or what they're doing. They think it's all just put on or an act or something like that. So when Robert had me, at one point, actually as a psychic bodyguard, because he was getting so much flack from the press and from different groups of people. So he had me there, to protect him from getting sick, because he kept getting sick from people talking about his Iron John stuff and his men's movement and all that. And then eventually I became a teacher in his groups, and eventually he stopped showing up and had me teaching. And I said, hey, wait a minute, let's start my own thing. But he said to me one day, he said, and actually the second conference we'd ever taught in, and he said, you're going to have to write a book, because no one take you seriously, speaking, because they think you're just making up all this stuff and it's just junk, and to impress them. You're going to have to write a book, and if it's framed in a book, they'll read it, and then they'll take it seriously. I was so enormously incensed, I remember stomped off to some river, and, but of course, as you noticed, I did do it, and it happened, and it came around, and of course, it didn't help one bit, nobody took me seriously at all, but the people that did come and the people that were heartbroken because they could feel the indigenous soul trying to poke through all of that kind of fascism that they'd been taught to become, the person themselves was keeping it down. And then, I started to write long before I ever set up my school. But once I got the school going, I was able to write for people who were really, really trying really hard to understand these things. So that really just has been an immense, merciful gift to myself. And hopefully what I was writing was useful as well. But Rescuing the Light itself, is some of the students felt a little chagrined by my even offering it to the public. And I said, well, look, guys, these are not my big, gigantic teachings. I'm not giving away any secrets. And most of this stuff is, everybody knows. And they wanted to be the only ones to have it under their pillowcase. And I said, look, man, there's 10,000 more of these where these came from. This is only just a little smattering. We can't be greedy. We've got to let the people have. But at the same time, I understood the reluctance, because people who have not been trying really hard to understand the magic that's in the root of an indigenous land and soul, they're not going to give it the respect it's due. So I understand. But most everybody's come around to seeing that it was a gift, to try to give a gift anyway to the people, so they don't die drowning in the morose strangeness of the times we're living in, where everyone is supposed to be depressed to have an identity. So. Yeah.
Well, it certainly is a gift, and I hope that many people read this book to try and open their minds and hearts to different ways of viewing themselves in the world. Now, the book is broken down into little sections or categories, and you can just open the book to anywhere and pull words of wisdom and beauty. So here, I'll just start with one from the section Mind and Hands. And the quote from you, Martine, is, "Our sense of wonder has got to go into what our hands can do. It can't just stay in our heads. The hands are so holy. What they make is just as eloquent as what our tongues can speak. And when the hands are done speaking, you have a beauty you can handle."
That's right. Absolutely. What more is there to say? No. Well, in native societies that are intact, I'm not talking just about people who have been pushed into becoming basically immigrants in their own country, but people are still intact. Everybody knows how to do things. Like in Atitlan, where I used to live in Guatemala, everyone knew how to make reed mats, which is the basic. It's like a piece of furniture that is the most ancient Mayan thing. It's called pop, and that's even what they used to call their kings. Everybody knows how to make sandal. Everybody knows how to make a pot. Everyone knows how to make a basket. All the women anyway, know how to weave. All the women know how to embroider. All the men know how to grow corn, how to make hoes, to farm. Everyone knows how to make a canoe. Everyone knows how to row a canoe. Everyone knows how to do all those things. But that doesn't mean all those people do all those things all the time. There are some people who make really good canoes, and there's some people who make really good sandals, and some people make really good pop, reed mats, and so on and so on and so on. And some women are just unbelievable weavers, and others are unbelievably incredible embroiderers. And that goes for absolutely everything. Some people are tremendous prayer makers with their words, which is considered an art, you see. And so in any village, everybody knows how to do everything. So they have this enormous respect for the people that know how to do it really better than anybody else. It's not like they say, "Oh, who does he think he is?" So they always go there, and hire them to make them their outfit or make this, even though they themselves know how. When I came back from Guatemala, I grew up in a town in New Mexico. To backtrack, was very very similar. Also, they also everybody knew how to do everything. So, but in non-indigenous society, which I think Europeans used to have, 3,000-4,000 years ago, but people all of a sudden everything is specialized. Only this guy only knows how to do this, and this person knows how to do that, and a lot of people don't know how to do nothing. Don't know how to tie a knot, don't know how to pick up a load, don't know how this works, don't know how that works. So the hands, I would say, they're weeping, because our hands, they are so eloquent. Like people who are deaf, or people who are blind, they know how to touch things with their hands or sign with their hands. And dancers know how to move their hands. And so the hand with its opposable thumb is a language, you see. And so when the native people where I come, my basic early things I think come from, they have the idea that they would use this term from the voice of your mouth, of your lungs, and the product of your opposable thumb. So when you make an offering for the holies, the only thing the holies don't have is our voice and our capacity for language and metaphor and abstract thinking, and this wonderful hand that makes beauty. So the capacity to have something in the hand is also goes right with your mouth. Like I'm a guitarist too. I used to be under a different name. I was a known person. Played a lot of music, and they have I would sometimes be trying to learn some lick or some dang thing that I just couldn't get, and I would finally be able to do it in my mouth. And all of a sudden, if I could do it in my mouth, I could do it with my hands. And it took time, and I could play the whole thing. If I could do it with my hand, I realized I could also do it with my mouth. And this has been lost, this connection between the hand and the voice. And so, like ladies, when they would weave certain designs, and certain songs would come out of their hands, would come out of their mouth. And when the Mayans used to make paper out of the mulberry bark, they used to pound it. They hammer exactly like a silversmith hammers metal, silver and copper and gold. They would hammer out with these stone mallets on these logs that had a watermark marked on them, and that had a certain rhythm that you were required to do. And then you sang a certain song with it to somebody else who was doing a different song, the opposite direction, so that the paper, when it came out, actually had this song hammered in to the form that the paper took, which is what they used to wear for clothing. Everyone thinks Mayans wove. Well, they wove a lot, but they mostly wore paper clothing, just like the Polynesians. And so this capacity with the hands and the mouth, I believe that the people, when they lose the capacity of their hands to make beauty and to make things, they lose so much. Modern life says, if you work with your hands, you mean, well, that's just for old folks, to keep them busy so they don't lose their minds in the nursing home. Or if you work with your hands, it's because you haven't quite made it to the corporate ladder where you just sit on your hands and look out there or point or just, do a computer. And that's just not the case. The nobility. Let me tell you another thing. There was a king in Scythia, in what is now the area of basically where Kazakhstan goes into the other side of Ukraine, and in the area of the Bashkiri. And his name was Ateas. He was a Scythian king. And the Greeks had sent a whole bunch of guys to try to talk him into letting them invade their land and put this big statue of Hercules and all this. And they were looking for this king to talk to him. And they came upon this man combing out this beautiful horse, who didn't have his shirt on. He had big long hair and a big mustache, and his pants covered with blue buckskin, covered with little gold deer, And he was combing his horse, and they said, "Excuse me, sir, we'd like to talk to King Ateas." He said, "What do you want to talk to him about?" I said, "Well, we're not going to tell you." I said, "I am King Ateas." And he said, "What do you mean?" King Ateas combs out his own horse. "Yeah, and I milk my own cows, and I milk my own sheep, and I also make love to my own wife. What's it to you?" He says, "Well, our king has people to do that for him." I said, "Well, he's a lazy bastard, We do our own work. Even though I'm a king, I love my animals. I love my horses. I don't let anybody touch these horses except me." So the idea of people actually working all of a sudden becomes demonized, that your hand is some kind of just something that you do to make yourself feel good, like your craft, or something like it's not important. It's just as important as speaking eloquent. And if you don't have that, you don't have no memory either. That's going back to your original point, you see. So that hand are very, very important. Anybody from the old days will say, "Oh, where do you go? You go talk to the woodsman, or you go talk to the carpenter. You want to hear what happened to the history." It's because they can remember everything according to how it's made. When I first came back from Guatemala, I love leather, and all the vegans are going, I hate this man, he eats meat. So yeah, but I only eat meat that I love. I only eat animals that I've known. I only eat the ones with the sweet eyes. I don't just have them lined up in these pens and these horrible deaths. Everything has beauty and grief in it. And so I love the old buckskin shirts that the old Indian guys I used to know wore. So I wanted to have someone that came back from Guatemala, and so I would make them. And whenever I had a terrible problem, I wouldn't know exactly how to make the cuts, but I would sit for days trying to figure out how to cut this hide that had taken me 2 weeks to tan, or actually 3 hides. And when I finally made the cuts, and when I finally made the sewing, and when I finally had it done, my problem would have been resolved because it was from one process to the next. From one process to the next, my memory would I would actually sew one thing to the next. I would be able to connect one thing from the past with one thing from the future. And occasionally, my problem would not be solved by making a coat. But when I was done, I still had a coat, and a really cool one, too. So my problem turned into a coat. So I wear my problem around as beauty. Who cares? But so your hand can make something that your voice can also participate in, and that creates, that's basically culture. And when you lose that, you lose a lot. You lose so much, And there's little bits and pieces of the musicians who use their hands, but nowadays everything, is so automated. I mean, it's just unbelievable. So our hands are crying, they're weeping. That's why in my school in the morning, it's all lectures, all me rapping, people learning, people singing. Afternoons, all making. All learning the spiritual ancestry of all the things they are making and the doing of it with, an offering. So and they're quite good at it. It's amazing. You have people who never done anything in their whole life, all of a sudden try to spin a thread, made, and they're good at it. And you should see the look on their face. They're like, "Oh my God, it's happening, and they can't stop. It's like really funny. I could tell you a lot of stories about that, but yeah,
It sounds
it's lovely.
like a wonderful place of learning and connection. What you were just speaking of reminds me, it brings my eye to one of the quotes from the section titled Flight. And you said,
Hey.
yeah, think of how far civilized people have fled from being truly intact just to escape the burden of having to live and die in a worthy way.
Right. Truly. Just think. I mean, that is the gigantic study of a lifetime to see what all that is, because the flight is the fleeing away from intactness as an indigenous being. And when I say indigenous, I'm not talking about Abnakis or, Anishinaabeg, which of course are indigenous, but I'm talking about indigenousness in a bigger sense. And when you have contrived, civilizations have contrived to not have to be beholding to the originations of anything. They don't have to ask permission of any of the things they take out of the ground or off the tree or off the plant, or even to plant it or even to live there. And when they also don't see their ancestors as being human, but being plants and being animals and being stones and being rivers and being from those things directly descended, when you get a civilization that says you don't owe anything to anybody, you don't have to give anything back, and you're not from there, you're not descended from a rock, you're just descended from Abraham. Then what happens is the people then, they're fleeing. That's a way of doing flight. They may be standing perfectly still, but culturally they're fleeing because they're pushing the earth away from them at the speed of light. And so all of the inventions that are made to give comfort in order to assuage the pain of the grief of the loss of that, because the soul just loves being connected to all those things. And it doesn't like what's going on. And so feel pain, and that pain is depression, and that depression is medicated, or people buy a boat and go do this, or they go do that, or on a vacation do this, and then it falls short of that, and then they kill themselves, or they don't. It's all nonsense. The idea is that you shouldn't be fleeing in the first place, but stay with it and try to learn what you can give and be a small being. So civilization makes it really easy for you to flee, but staying in a place in order to give a gift to the holy and nature, as I call it, it's not hard, but you actually have to do it. You can't just hope it happens to you. It's like not gonna fall out of the sky. It's not a program. It can't be done. You can't just go to a workshop and get it. It's not a mining situation, because everything in modern culture is mined, whether you like it or not. I mean, agriculture is mining, going and getting what you want is mining, everything's mining. And so you got to stop mining and start making something live, start making beauty, be a solid person.
Yes, thank you. Now, before I come to the next quote, I just want to remind our live audience that you can put in your questions for Martine Prechtel on the Q&A tab. So if you go down to the bottom tab on your screen, not the chat, but the Q&A tab, and you can type your questions in there, and in the last 15 minutes or so, we'll be reading some of those out to Martine. Now, I love the teachings around grief and praise, and a lot of what you talk about is our inability to either grieve or praise. So if I can, I want to come to some of your quotes on grief. And the
Sure.
first one is just a really simple one, but there's a lot to unpack, I think. And it's, all dishonorable behavior is an abbreviation of grief.
Right. That's really a powerful thing to say, and it's also a little flippant to say because it's a large thought. But dishonorable behavior is actually very hip right now. It's really, become very hip to be to get away with things, to get away with life, to get away with, corporate malfeasance with money, or good business practices considered not leaving yourself open instead of giving away everything you've got. It's getting more and more and more, and leaving everybody on the floor of Amazon, with the least amount of expectancy for the future, and just, going on and on and on and drilling the ground out. So dishonorable behavior, as far as grief goes, it means that there's what it's trying to say, I believe, if you would like to hear, is that deep inside our souls, as we said earlier, we know that we're not like that, and we're not born like that, and we're not meant to be like that. There's a very good, another quote about that, and where we're not really deep inside us want to be that kind of person, and so there's this huge grief about that. And what happens with grief is not sorrow. And I wrote a whole book on this called Grief, the spell of rain and dust. It's not sorrow, it's not weeping. Grief is the beauty that fills the sorrow, that fills the loss, that fills the terror of having lost something. People are really hip on being grief-stricken, but what they're doing is not grief-stricken. All of that stuff is just finally, for the first time in their life, they've been allowed to weep, so it's a new experience. But that has nothing to do with grief. Grief is what you do to rebuild and to make life happen again. And so when the inability to destroy something and then realize how much destruction you've done and to grieve for it by making something beautiful and better out of that grief, then what you do is you become a violent person. So violence, most of violence, and dishonorable behavior, all wars, are based on the fact that the grief from the previous war has not been metabolized into beauty, and therefore we have to have another war to fill the hole of the loss of the previous one. So dishonorable behavior, as in the political echelons that we have seen in the last 4 and 10 years, all of that is just this unmetabolized grief. It's an incapacity with the standing still and said, you know what, this was not a good idea. This was not good, and I did not begin this, but instead of saying but, I'm not only going to apologize, but I'm going to make life different. It's like right now, a lot of people, after all of these COVID shutdowns and things like that, they say, "I want to get life back to normal." I say, "You better not. You better not. You better make it different than it was. Otherwise, you're going to have more of the same thing." That's where it came from to begin with. You make a different life, a different way of seeing and understanding. And then grief, instead of understanding the grief as being the sorrow of loss and weeping for people dying, I mean, that of course, you weep for that. That's goes without saying. But that has nothing to do with grief. Grief is what you do when you're done doing that. All right, it's what you make out of your culture. It's the beauty that you make from that loss, and what you fill that hole with, and what you grow with it. So, if you're going to have a loss that you're going to be terrified of, then that's going to become solidified, and it becomes, an illness inside your body, or a psychological illness, where every day when you go past that area, you're going to avoid it, because it's all of a sudden full of pain, instead of having them metabolized by grief into something that actually gives life. So dishonorable behavior, when you'll have people who, you know, sell each other out or betray each other, or people who say things of mine, in a cocktail party that I ask them not to give away just because it makes them feel powerful. That dishonorable behavior doesn't come from them being evil people. It comes from their incapacity to feel alive and well and worthy, because they are so smashed down by the losses that they've had, that they have not learned with their hands and their voice to make a beauty that will feed something besides themselves in a time beyond their own that they will never see, which is the unpopular modern part. In other words, you cannot become a human and work for the time that we're in. You have to work for the time you won't see. And that's what makes you a human worth descending from in this time. It makes you a human worth something in this time. So, it's a strong bag of nails to try to swallow for people who think they just got to get what they want and then die before the whole thing blows up. But I think that's what makes it all blow up, is trying to get what you want all the time, and that's what makes the atomic bomb and the mass destruction and all of this sickness in the first place. So I think if people could, actually see the joy, the beauty, the incredibleness of being. I mean, after all, we're only a little pile of ash and water stuck together so we can kiss and argue. I mean, wow, how could it happen? You know what I mean? We're allowed to be here for this small amount of time, and to have the majesty of seeing the sun come up more than once, or have our children at our fire and drink some tea. So. If that's not able to be big, then you have to build big buildings. You have to rip other people off. You have to take off their land. You have to do this. You have to do that in order to feel like you're, quote, somebody, because now you're powerful, because a lot of people cringe when you walk in the room. Well, that's nowhere for me, So I think dishonorable behavior is people who have become a victim, but they are now the victimizers, and that's basically the history of the world for the last 2,000 and a half years. So, I'm trying to, in my tiny little, squeaky little ant way, trying to say that you don't really have to be that way,
Yes. Now the counterpoint is praise. And in your
Yeah.
section, reverence, wonder, sense of humor, admiration, you say this, and I really think this is so simply put and beautiful, and I'd love to hear you unpack it a bit more. And the quote is, praise is a natural human impetus. If you can't praise, somebody taught that to you.
Yes. Well, that's the same as the other quote. Dishonorable behavior is all a matter of, grief unmetabolized, because grief and praise are one and the same thing. Grief is a praise of life. You will not feel the loss of anything unless you are absolutely in love with something. Grief is not about when you don't get what you want. Grief is when you lose what you love. And that's two different things, my friend. And so praise is a way to give life to things. And so grief is a way to praise having been given the life enough to feel the loss of having lost. And so praising is, people would praise in modern culture, but they only praise them if they want more out of them, or if they want to get them off into bed, or if they want this or they want that. If they want something, they praise. But praise is not about that. I mean, I have a lot of horses, and I don't have like Tricaners and quarter horses and thoroughbreds. I've got Spanish barbs, man, and these horses don't put up with no nonsense. They they know a fake when they see one. And if you're teaching trying to ask them if they will allow you to ride them when they're young, you have to know how to praise them, and it damn well better not be empty praise. It better be how beautiful it looks between their ears, and how that caramel color just above their coronet is, and how their hoof just looks like agates coming after a rain in the desert. That has to be real, man. It can't be like, oh, I'm just saying this so you do what I want you to do. You can't just say something so somebody will give you a kiss, or somebody will give you the bigger bank account, or the boss will raise. I mean, praise has got to be there. And you've got to praise your plants, you've got to praise the holy, you've got to praise the sun, you've got to praise everything. And that is what is known as eloquence. Everybody else says, oh, man, that's a big waste of time. That's just a bunch of chumps talking, man. And, oh, yeah, they cut everything down to computer ease, emoji-osis, and you have no praise. Nobody is praised. It's just all veneer. So praising is not the counterpoint of grief. Grief is praise. They're one and the same damn thing. They're identical. Because if you praise and at the end of your praise you're not weeping, you didn't praise. And if you have grief and at the end of your grief you're not praising the life that you've been given in order to feel the grief, then you didn't grieve.
Wow. Wonderful. Thank you. Now,
Yeah,
that'll
teach you to ask a question. You know me, I'm always going to say something. I don't want to let you down, you see. I don't want you to feel cheated. So I give you all I can.
You're far from letting us down. You're far from letting us down. Now, we've got a few questions already from the audience, and I'll get to one or two of those right now, and I'll remind everybody, if you want to put your questions for Martine into the Q&A tab, please do. There's one from Carol, and Carol says, heartfelt thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today and always. I would like to hear more around the word beauty.
Beauty? Well, you better buy this book.
Yeah.
There's a lot about beauty in there. Yeah. Well, beauty is very necessary. And, I don't know Carol, but I would imagine that Carol loves beauty. And, it's a strange thing in English, the word beauty, because it comes from the word holy. If you look into the etymology of words, you'd come up with some amazing things. So why did we give up thinking that? That's pretty good, And like sometimes you see a grizzly bear. You guys in British Columbia know about grizzly bears, and brown bears, and grizzly bears are beautiful even when they're coming after you. They have that bristle on their back, and they just have that snarl and that bad smell coming out of their mouth and those big old claws, All the thing of natural world is beautiful. And the thing about human beings, they're the only thing on earth that's really actually capable of not being beautiful. But they are also capable of beauty. So one of the obligations of a human being is to make beauty, but not flippant beauty, not veneer beauty, not cosmetic beauty. But there's a quote in here you probably read already. It says, beauty is not the way you look, but the way you look at the world. It says that right in their song. And so when you're an indigenous society, I mean, it's like the idea of a rich person dressing down is anathema to them. It's like a horrible idea. Everybody dresses up. And not dresses up like junk that you buy in the boutique. They all weave their own clothing, and it's all got a meaning, and it's all got written on them. And it's very beautiful. But you would never think of going anywhere looking bad. Even in your rags, they're beautiful. It's just amazing. Everybody is into beauty. And the idea of not beauty, you see, it does not come from indigenosity. So the style of doing something matters, and how you do something matters. In other words, you don't ever want to do something just to get it done. I tell you, Miss Carol, one time when I was a boy, I really was a boy. I wasn't always an old guy. I was a wise guy. I act like it since I was 2. But when I was younger, I had a really, 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 really incredible horse named Amariento, which the next book, by the way, is about. And he could fly over 45 miles an hour, and he was a tiny little horse, and everyone would laugh at me when I'd race against anybody, and I never lost a race. And one time I was showing off, and there was a lot of people in this place, and I rode very fast, And I didn't remember that there was a 17th century irrigation canal underneath all of these big reeds. And so I was riding back to my horse trailer after demonstrating this, riding, and whoop, I disappeared from the sky and fell into this 7.5-foot ditch. And luckily didn't break my neck. The horse was knocked out. I was knocked out cold. But the horse got up before I did, apparently, and didn't put a hole through me with his hoof, thank God. And he ran off. And when I came to, there was this old cowboy guy who had gone off and got my horse. He saw what happened, but nobody else saw it. All they saw me is doing a Houdini trick, flying through the air, jumping this ditch, and then all of a sudden, just dropped out of the sky. So they didn't know what happened. So he grabs me and he pulls me to my feet and he says, "You know what, son? There's two kinds of riders. Don't worry about it. The first kind are the ones that fall off, and the second ones are the ones that are going to fall off. So I got to tell you one thing, is that if you're going to fall off when you know it's coming, just make sure that it's beautiful, because God is fed by the way you fall off. And so you got to make sure even your trajectory feeds God, so that you're hitting the ground is beautiful." And I tell you, that was one beautiful trajectory. And I never did get that guy's name, and he disappeared, and I got on my horse all wobbly. I was, half, pretty dazed, and I rode out there, and all the people were cheering. They thought it was a Houdini thing. It was just an accident. But the beauty of something feeds, no matter what you do, even if you fail at feeding the holy, long as the failure is a beautiful failure. Okay, man, that's good.
Beautiful, truly beautiful. Now, there's a question from Lucia, or Lucia. I'm not sure the correct pronunciation. And Lucia says, "I could listen to you talk all day. The wisdom feels deeply nutritious."
I'm glad to
Of the
hear
body.
Ask my wife about it. Poor thing. Yeah, no, that's lovely. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. I'm too joking. I'm from the Reds. It's a horrible habit.
Oh, we love it. We love it. She says, "Will you speak of the body?" And Lucia, there is a section in the book, Rescuing the Light, on this. She asks, "Will you speak of the body and how to be in good relationship with the body?"
Yeah, no, Rescuing the Light. I mean, the real reality of this book is there isn't really any categories. They're there for a teaching purpose, so that you will think of those categories in regard to what is being said there, but they actually cross over all over the place. There's much about the body. The human body, of course, is not the only body that there is. And the body of the earth, and as far as indigenous thought that I come from anyway, are one and the same. And so that's a gigantic subject matter. But the thing is, it's not separate from anything else. It's what you're inside a gigantic body when you're living on the earth. But most people who don't live really in any sort of natural construct don't really know they're walking through their blood veins, when they're riding their horse up in a royal or up a coulee. And by the same token, the Holy is riding through your veins too when you're asleep and you're dreaming. So when you're going to heal a body, a human body has not been made, not been created, not been evolved to be totally healthy. It is always just a little kitty wampus, man, a little throchi mochi, just a little bit this way, a little bit that way. And the reason for that, they say indigenously, is so that people will constantly need each other. So they have to help each other to get this way and to go that way. And so the same goes for the earth. The earth is always just a little kitty wampus, and so they got to have the people go to the shrines and feed with their rituals all the beauty that they can make for Carol, and let the world jump back up again, because the earth's body, when you heal that earth's body, it heals the people's body, it heals the bear's body, it heals the whale's body, and God help us all, the ocean of all things, the main body of all bodies is the ocean. So I could go on really heavily, because I teach so much about this, but the body is not a separate thing. It's like, okay, we have the mind, and then we have the body, and then we have the spirit. No, we don't got that, man. It's all the same. It's all the same. It's not all one, but it's all this gigantic knowledge of living. I have a saying about this too. This is about when a trauma has happened to an earth, it doesn't leave when the effects of that trauma leave. Like when you get sick, And the body, like for instance, if someone shoots you, you have a bullet. I've had flak and bullets in my body, and the bullet is removed. The fright and the sickness of the event having taken place, or even having gotten a sickness, doesn't leave when the symptoms leave. They're still there. That's why medicine men and medicine women, they pull out the fright bullet, as we call it. But they can't do it by themselves. So what the body does by nature, and so does the earth, is that it molts. It molts off that piece of history in such a way, like a grief, metabolizes that moment, that frozen, petrified moment, into something that gives life, so that you no longer have the grief bullet, or what you might say the ghost bullet, or the ghost sickness, or the ghost COVID in your body anymore, and it leaves. And that's what's happening to the world right now in the earth, is that the ghost, the spirit of what has happened, has not been yet metabolized ritually and spiritually by the people, and so the earth is still sick with it. And so the people, they're killing themselves. They've had, in the United States, they've had 100,000, drug overdoses in the last year. It's way, way up because the people are just, they've lost it because the ground itself is ill. And so the people, if they could, with their music, with their beautiful language, with the beauty of the way they walk, the way they live, all these different things, instead of trying to get away from what was, try to make it live again instead of sitting around moaning and groaning about it, or making, like, oh, I'm so significant because I was sick or because I lost my husband. No, we make life live again. So the earth itself comes back alive. It comes back alive, you come back alive. But let me tell you, it's a lot bigger subject than that, and so it's kind of spurious for me to go on and on about that in 5 minutes. So I apologize for you having tried. But in Rescuing the Law, I talk quite a bit about it, but I also talk a lot about it in every other book I have. But it's just hidden in narrative, So someday, I'm in 2 years, in 2023, I'm coming out with one, be more for you, I think. So anyway, I hope that was helpful.
Thank you. There's a question from Alicia, and she's asking about something you mentioned earlier on when you were speaking. She says, can you expand on the phrase you said that in our current culture, people are supposed to be depressed to have an identity?
Yeah, right. I've got a section on that too. Under depression. Yeah, depression is status jewelry now, man. If you're not depressed, you can't be a musician. You can't be an artist. You can't be anything. As a matter of fact, there are people that aren't depressed acting depressed. Depression is basically when you've decided to be an enemy with yourself, Let's see. Let me look this up. I got something cool here. There is no word for depression in native languages. You don't have that. All you have is grief. It says, here's one for you. You can definitely think yourself into a hole, but you can't think yourself out. To get out of that hole, you have to bow to a deeper and older mind than the one you used to think yourself into that pit. A mind who can teach you how to become a seed, how to root yourself firmly into the hole by learning all you can about the hole you're stuck in. How to sprout yourself back into the world as a plant from that seed. To make a plant whose seeds itself can sprout a time of hope beyond our own. That way, you're inside the hole and outside the hole simultaneously, and you're not depressed. Right? So that's what we have to say about that a little bit, because nowadays, it's just so hip to have a sickness of depression. It's not that people don't experience that, but you can't meditate. You can't medicate depression. It has to be metabolized, because depression is an incapacity to not be violent with grief, and it's just self-inflicted. Instead of and if it's not self-inflicted, then it's exported onto the world in bad global politics and business practices. So, yeah, sorry, I'm kind of a heavy dude, but the thing is, people are actually beautiful, amazing beings, and they can heal. Everything wants to heal, but some people don't want to heal because they get a bigger identity out of having something wrong with them. So we have to go deeper, and if you go into the histories of things, even the histories of the words that you use in order to describe yourself or your situation, it means that your life is too small. You got to go outside, man. You got to go see other things. You got to go far away from anything you ever know, because you figure if everything you've done and lived is not working, something else. But you're not going to get it by going farther and farther west and in Western expansionism. See what's already there, what's so beautiful, you know. But it's easy for me to say that, you know, and people get very angry. But I think the main thing is to know that if you're worthy, if you feel worthy because you can feed the holy in the world, you don't feel depressed. It doesn't matter what prison you're stuck in. It doesn't matter what hospital you're in or how sick you are. If you're feeding, if you learn to make beauty and you make that beauty under all condition, then, you know, you're happy where you are. It's not about people getting what they want and being happy anyway. So when it's not either one or the other, then your body jumps up and lives again, man. You know. Well, it's a big subject.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have time for one more question from our live community here, and this one is from Paka. And
Baka. All right, cool.
Paka. And
Paquita.
the Paka says, immense gratitude to you, Martine, for your teachings on grief and praise. It changed
Thank
my
you.
relationship to grief and thus my life. For those of us burdened and disconnected by modern society, what are ways we can, as you've said, get in touch with our own indigeneity to relate to the world in the right way?
Well, I hate to tell you, the best way to approach that is to reconcile yourself to the fact that you have to bestow it on somebody else and that you will never have it. To give it to, be willing to bestow what you never had received, and to be willing to bestow what you never will receive by learning everything you can about it and bestowing it on a generation that's beyond your own, maybe not even born yet. That's what gives you the indigenosity now. In other words, if you're willing not to have it, if you're willing not to mine and not to need something like that, when you make every effort in order to make the beauty rise and roll and find out what that really actually means and should look like, and say, you know, I'm the way I am, but I want to give this to somebody who hasn't shown up yet. Then there's some brain cells, there's some soul cells, there's some things in the road that you're on and in that grows from the willingness to do that. And then you become a person worth descending from. You see, because your ancestry says, oh, I'm a Celt, or I'm a this, or I'm a that. Well, those are all fabrications, by the way. If you look into the history of it, gets into it, you become more and more and more of a mixed form, which is what civilization doesn't want. It's always looking for purity, but you don't want purity. What you want is to be able to make a future for somebody that is a now, like our now, right now, and that you as a person will become worth descending from, instead of trying to find out what you're descended from. So you get close to an indigenousness. It's not being close to, nativeness or anything like that. That's a political use of the word, which is fine too. It's a whole other matter. But to find your indigenosity, you can't have it, because the thing that wants it is the one that kills it. With the indigenosity already knows who it is already close to it, is already there. And so that being is busy hiding from the one that wants to find it. You see, that's the hard thing to learn. And it's not really comical, but you got to learn how to laugh, because the more you chase it, the more it runs away. So the idea is to make a feast for it. I got some great sayings for this in here, by the way. If you look into them, they're just perfect. You can see them over and over again. And you make a feast for it, and then you allow this being that you're talking about, that you want to get closer to eat without possessing it, without taking it, without roping it around the neck and dragging it home. Because the thing that wants it is the one that wants to kill it, because it wants to have it like a mined mineral instead of allowing it to run free. And if you approach things like that, then you will get closer, and you'll become a servant of the greatness of the holy in nature. But then, maybe not. But then you trying and failing in a beautiful way is worth doing, because it also feeds the holy in nature. So it's okay to fail trying. It's okay. I say, It's okay to fail trying. Just make sure your failures are beautiful. You guys, I can't hear them laughing. Okay, let's do that.
I have to laugh
So
on
funny.
behalf of everybody.
Yeah, you go. Hopefully, I feel sad I can't kiss them all on the head and sign their books right there like I used to. But anyway, it's not so bad. A little bit of something.
Hopefully someday soon that will be our reality.
Go will.
Now,
Yeah.
Martine, if you have time for one more audience question, I don't want to
Sure.
assume. There's one that
No.
came in. Yeah. Okay. There's one that came in from Neil, and I think this is really worthy of addressing. He says, "Thank you for sharing your beauty. I am a Nahia Cree man from Alberta.
All
Many."
right, now well, I got blood there too. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I do. And Nahia, he's what they call the mountain Cree, Yeah.
Oh,
Not the swampy Cree, prairie Cree.
okay.
Anishinaabe.
Huh. So he says many indigenous people of this land are deeply wounded and lost. Can you share any insight for the indigenous people of this land?
Well, I'm presuming he's talking so much about the boarding school travesties and all that sort of thing. But boy, I tell you, brother Nachia, that's a question that is so immense. I don't want to dishonor a response by making it too small or too short. But I will say that to remember that what made you and all your ancestors and your brother and sister and all the people indigenous is not only coming down the ancestral line, but that ancestral line came right straight out of the ground, out of the rivers, out of the trees, out of the salmons, out of the mountains, out of the otters, out of the moose, out of everything that's there. That's where it came from. And let me tell you, it's still there. It's still there. And that's the one that knows how to heal everything. That's the one that has the power to go in the body and sing itself back to life. And like, for instance, you take a plant that's from the ancestral knowledge and you eat that plant, and you take another plant that it grows with and you powder it and you put it on the outside. The one plant's looking for the other plant. Each one has half a song. And together, when they meet each other, they have a full song. When they have that full song, that's when the plant from the inside, looking for the one on the outside, is going through all the different parts of your body. And the one from the outside is looking for the one on the inside, going through all the parts of your body. They're going to heal if you give it a chance. It's the natural world that will give you that. It's not going to be any white man law. It's not going to be winning back land. It's not going to be winning recognition, which is just fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. It's good to have it. But do not confuse that you have done anything by that. It's the land itself and where you come from. That's the one that has all the capacity to give you everything that was always yours and that you are. That thing wants to come right in and say hi. The medicine that comes from inside us and the medicine that comes from outside, they're incomplete, but when they meet, they form a full song. So that's what I got to say about that in short shrift. But let me tell you, there's a lot more could be said. But all blessings on you and your people. And if you know Margaret Cardinal, say hello to her. Yeah.
Maybe they know each other.
I imagine they do, yeah.
Martine, I know you're on the phone, so you can't see the comments, but I'll just give you a few so you know how much everyone in the Banyen community who's here live is appreciating it. Joseph says, "Love your work. What a blessing." Denise says, "Thank you so much. My soul aches for this wisdom. Cold drink on a hot day. Blessings to you."
Good deal. That sounds good. I could use that now, man. Tell you what.
And Paka, who sent in the question before, says, "Wow, mind blown in the best way with a heart. Thank you so much."
Good deal. Okay, Paquita.
And
right.
Finally, Susan says, "Thank you, Martine, for your words today and for encouraging us to make beauty and give gifts."
Yeah, definitely. That's the first saying in the book. It says, a lot of times it's hard to remember stuff, man. The empire's breathing on you. It says this is the first saying, and I'll let it off with this. You say, under blessings and spirituality, it says, when you can't remember what to do, what to say, or what the deeper teachings are, When all else escapes you, just remember this. Always feed what needs feeding. Always make beauty. That's the first thing that's on there. So,
Martin Prechtel, everybody. Martin, thank you so much for joining us.
well, thank you for letting me join you and terrorize the poor Canadian public, with my crazy words, but do what we can. Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward, as I know the whole community will be, to our follow-up interview on your other book, new book, The Mare and the Mouse, Stories of My Horses.
Well, I tell you what, when you read that, you're going to wonder about my sanity as a young man. I did so many crazy things on horseback, but when you get the second one, you'll know for sure I was totally out there. But I love those horses so much, I just had to write and give them a gift for it, and for the people in these times to read something that's not just make them sad, because there's a lot of funny things in there. So I hope you love it.
I'm really looking forward to opening that book and reading what you've written. Just a reminder to everybody that you can find the Banyen podcast anywhere that podcasts are cast: Spotify, YouTube Music, Apple Music, or if you Google Banyen Books in Conversation podcast, you'll find a variety of websites where the podcast can be found, and also on our YouTube channel, Banyen Books YouTube channel. Our website is banyen.com, banyen.com, and we've been here today with Martin Prechtel. His website is martinprechtel.com. That's MartinPrechtel.com. And again, Martin, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much to Banyen Books and yourself, Mr. Ross, and all the people that come to listen a bit. And I hope they love this book and it does them some good. It's a little raft, to keep you from drowning. All blessings on you and all of you.
You have been listening to In Conversation, a podcast of Banyen Books in Sound.